It's commonly touted that being a leader and having leadership qualities makes you more attractive, especially for men. The idea being that it goes from leadership to attraction. But we've never bothered to question the contrary. Does being attractive increase your chances of being a leader? It's not a radical or controversial topic in itself. Business Insider in 2013 published a similar article. Likewise, Forbes addressed appearance-based discrimination in 2019, and Stanford law professor Deborah Rode wrote an entire book on the topic called Beauty Bias. The study of leadership itself is an entire sub-branch in the field of social psychology, but until quite recently, scientists investigated a link between appearances and trait perceptions, the so-called halo effect that we talk about on the channel all the time. In 2002, a paper from the Journal of Applied Psychology tried to better define this idea of leadership. Personality and Leadership by Judge and colleagues follows the idea that history is shaped by a handful of great men, which itself was a theory proposed by Victorian historian Thomas Carlyle. Obviously, in this postmodern context, this theory can also extend to women too. Just look at Jacinda Ardern. In 1931, W.H. Cowley summarized that the study of leadership must be conducted through the study of traits. Past studies have been conducted on a range of traits, from primal to humanist, to find what it takes to be a leader, but you'll notice that there's nothing about appearances here. These different trials showed limited cross-review agreement. For example, Mann 1959 and Stockdale 1948 suggested that masculinity is an important factor, but this wasn't replicated in the other tests. The one trait that was replicated across all of them was self-confidence. But self-confidence doesn't just come out of thin air. It develops from continuous and repeated positive affirmations in your interactions. Quite frankly, attractive people get more positive affirmations, whether they're right or wrong. That's not to say that attractive people make for better leaders or more effective ones. It's that their likelihood of being promoted to a leadership position increases rapidly, like a multiplier for their field experience. Judge and colleagues' research does indicate that more effective leaders have greater intelligence, extroversion, and emotional stability, alongside openness to experiences. However, Antonakis 2011 states that there are traits that appear to matter and those that do not. In other words, it's only human nature to assign physical attributes with psychological traits, whether it be done correctly or incorrectly, which itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. For instance, hiring managers may intuitively assume that tall applicants will have more assertive personalities, because all of the tall people in the manager's life have been that way so far. Being attractive is important, and it has always been important, despite what people tell you. It's just that in the last 100 years, cognitive psychology has been able to gather more objective data on a biological impulse that has been the core part of humans ever since we became sentient organisms. It affects romantic partner selection, a teacher's thoughts on a student's intelligence, and even a jury's perception on a judgment in a simulated trial. This is essentially all part of the consequences of the inherent halo effect that biases our own decisions. In work settings, attractive people have a significant advantage in being hired, in receiving more favorable job evaluations, and in receiving better job outcomes, not to mention that they can earn up to 15% more for the same work. In Hosoda's paper, professionals were as subject to this beauty bias as fresh graduates, and both genders preferred attractiveness equally. Although the interesting point to note is that the bias of attractiveness has decreased in recent years, likely due to discrimination laws, political correctness, social media, and better representation changing our own perceptions of beauty. This has realistically always been the case. Corporate brands hire people they feel embody their company personality and spirit, and no brand wants to associate itself with unattractive people, especially not Abercrombie & Fitch. Which is ironic because I don't think I've ever seen a quote-unquote cool kid wearing Abercrombie. Something that I've personally found a bit strange is when employers ask for a photo attached to the resume. It's definitely not common practice in Australia, but in one study in the UK, 23% of employees said that a photo had been requested of them, despite only 2.7% of employers admitting to requesting one. In scientific literature, this is called aesthetic labor, where different people have to put in more or less work for the same result. It's a term that's often attributed to modeling, where in a previous video, I discussed that models of color have to put in more aesthetic labor, i.e. changing aspects about themselves, to book the same jobs as their white counterparts. So what does this mean for you? Improving your attractiveness will undeniably give you more opportunities throughout life. From social influence to work placements, it's a multiplier to your abilities. To answer the main question, you don't need to be attractive to be a leader, but research shows that it will dramatically increase your likelihood of becoming one. It's no coincidence that influential leaders are taller than average with better than average bone structure. That's not commentary on whether they're effective or ineffective leaders, but they all tend to look a certain way, and there's science behind that. Rie et al. In 2013 found that body height, facial elongation, and facial dimorphism are all factors that indicate perceived leadership ability. Body height is self-explanatory. Taller men are more likely to gain managerial and administrative positions. Facial dimorphism is a recurring topic on the channel, where manlier men and womanlier women have advantages in specific fields. Facial elongation is the idea of facial width to height ratio, where our perceptions on whether someone is trustworthy or aggressive is determined by how vertically tall their midface is. On the channel, the Defining Beauty series tries to explain what specifically makes a person attractive. It's something that exists out of a need due to how tangible and strongly felt the influence of looks are. Despite what your parents told you, looks do matter, and with how far modern medicine has come, I don't see why anyone has to give up and accept their fate in the 21st century. If a nose job makes you feel more confident in your appearance, it'll quickly pay for itself in non-tangible benefits. Gattaca was a thought-provoking example of this concept of human determinism. Although the main character had to perform significantly more aesthetic labor due to his unfortunate genes, he still becomes the person he wants to be at the end. There was this quote I distinctly remember a certain plastic surgeon coining, "You're not ugly, you're just poor."